Hello my dear students, here's again Computer Wunsum and I will show you the next tutorial which is about colors. GIMP is an image manipulation program, which means it can change any image we want, especially with the colors. But before we can really start changing the colors of anything, we need an image at first. Therefore we go to File, then create a new image by New, and then we can change the options of the image. In the advanced options, we can also change some specific values. For instance, the color space, the RGB color, or one of the more important things, the background color, foreground color, or what color we ever want. If we press OK now, we stay with the background color now. If we press OK, then you can see that we are getting an image with purely black color. The reason for this is that the background color and the foreground color are up here, and as you can see, the background color is all black while the foreground color is white. This means if we want to paint with anything in there, we are getting a white color in this case. Let's start by using the paintbrush in itself. If we brush anything with the paintbrush, you can see that the background gets white. So the main feature of a paintbrush is not only that you can use this here, but you can also use different brushes if you want. Depending on what you need, you can use any brush you think is necessary. Even some more exotic brushes like this one, or anything you need usually. Most of the time, however, you're using these four. The brushes with hardness 25 to 100. As you can see, this upper one here has a little bit less hardness than the lower one, because hardness in fact means how much pressure, so to say, you are putting on the whole brush. If the hardness is 25, then the pressure of the whole brush gets a little bit smaller, which means that the outer sides of the brush are also get a little bit more blurry. I will show this again at this example. You can see, if I zoom in a little bit, that the upper one, which has a hardness of 100, is much more straight and much more barriered than the lower one, which has more of a blurry outline. Our subject, however, today isn't how to paint, it is about colors. And to change the color of anything we are using, we can go up here in the foreground and the background color. By clicking once, there will be opened one small window where you can change the foreground color or the background color. Here I press the left mouse button and hold it, and I can change the position of here, where you can see in this lower bar what current color we have. By changing it down, we are getting black. By changing it in the upper right corner, we are getting more of a reddish tone. The lower it is, the blacker it is, and the higher it is, the brighter it will be. And the more left, the less color, and the more white, the more color, so to say. So you also have the possibility to change your color if you want. For instance, you can use green in our case, or yellow, by going on this white bar here and holding the left mouse button down. There you have the same procedure like the first example, and you have the possibility to change the color as far as you like. But not only this, you also have the possibility to change the color on these sliders here. As you can see, there are three sliders. The first one is red, the second one is green, and the third one is blue. If we, for instance, increase the green slider here in the middle, then you can see we are getting a very cyan tone. If we decrease, however, the blue slider, then you can see that the color in itself will become green. You can change all of these colors as far as you want. If there are no colors, then it is purely black. However, if it is full with color, then it's totally white. Now, one interesting part I will show you now too is the so-called HTML notation. HTML is the hypertext markup language, which is the language we are using in computers, in web design, pardon me, for showing websites and for a little bit more functionality. It isn't technically a programming language, it is more of a markup language like it's written. But for the moment, let's see what happens if we increase the green here. As you can see, the HTML notation doesn't have the usual numbers. If we increase them to the maximum, then we get F, 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 F. The reason for this is very simple. Every single color will be represented as from 0 to 255 in our case. 255 is the maximum value, which is represented in the hexadecimal system, a system with 16 different numbers from 0 to F as F, 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 F. Because FF is the highest value we can have in the hexadecimal system. So, for the moment, let's stay only with red, however, and try to paint something with it. We press OK, we have chosen the color, and then we can use our color by using our paintbrush. We can paint with it any way we want. I forgot to mention to zoom in and to zoom out. You have to hold down the Control key and move the mouse wheel. If we move the mouse wheel down, we are zooming out. If we move the mouse wheel up, we are zooming in. It's the same way if we are using the plus or the minus button on the keyboard. If we press once here and press minus, then we zoom out, and if we press plus, we zoom in. Very important are also these sliders here on the left side. Every single tool up here has different sliders which they can use for different things. In our case, we are using the paintbrush, as I said. The first slider we are using here is the so-called opacity. Opacity means how intense the color will be shown upon painting with the brush. Let's use another color here. For instance, let's use green. Okay. And then let's write 3 lines. We will paint them down here. The first line is here, which is purely intense green. And then we reduce the opacity of the line around 47%. And as you can see, the second line is a little bit darker than the first line. If we again decrease the opacity, then you can see that the lowest line in our case is a very dark green. Opacity means how much of this color will be inserted upon using, for instance, a paintbrush or an eraser or any other tool which paints on the canvas. We also can use this opacity to make some interesting effects. For instance, if we make a line directly through this here, then you can see that the opacity in here is a little bit smaller than the usual 100% which we are doing here. Opacity means that it presses with a power of around 40, 50, 15%, and the color will be included in the basic picture this way. The second feature, which is also very important for a brush, is the size. If we increase the size, then also the picture increases, the paintbrush increases, pardon me. We can use this to paint even much bigger plots or much smaller ones. If we are using, for instance, blue, and we are using a size of, let's say, 13, then we are getting some interesting painting values just this way. The third point, which is a little bit less important, is the so-called aspect ratio. Therefore, I will increase the size of my brush again to 250, which is again a normal circle, as you can see. However, if we increase the aspect ratio to 17, you can see that this circle is now flattened, so to say. If it is flat like this, this means that the aspect ratio is, in this case, 17:1, which we are using here. To get it back, however, we can click on this reset aspect ratio. Then we are getting the normal circle back. The next tool I will show you is the so-called eraser. It is some sort of opposite of the paintbrush, in as far that it uses actually the same sliders, but uses some different tool configurations. For the eraser, it depends on any form of picture you are using, but for our normal paint picture, we can use the background color. If we, for instance, zoom in here, I will show you that the eraser actually deletes the white thing and makes it into the background color we are using. However, if we change the background color, like this, into yellow, let's say, then you can see that it deletes actually the black thing and makes it yellow in our case. This is because the background color determines how the eraser colors things in itself. Sometimes we also see something which we don't use usually. For instance, we see this combination out of black and green, or black and white, which is a little bit sort of grayish, but we can't identify the correct color of it. Therefore, we can use the so-called color picker tool. It selects the color from a specific pixel. In our case, let's use this red greenish form, and if we click once, you will see in the foreground color that the color has changed into something brown, light brown or orangish. You can use the color picker for any form of color you can see in the picture. For instance, here you're getting some sort of very light pink. Here you're getting black, and here you're getting green. You can see a little bit more precisely how the color will be. For instance, if we are clicking on the black one, then you can see that the color changing. Or here, then you can see that this is a good combination of red and green. Or let's say here, which is a very intense white, but not as white as the usual white, because it has more green in it. You can use a color picker for any color you want. Now let's close this window and go to the next tool, which will be the so-called bucket fill tool. We can fill a selected area with a color or a pattern we want. At first, however, we need to select a specific color. Let's use magenta in our case. Magenta is a combination of red and blue, so it should be something we haven't used before. And now, if we click into any simple color we are seeing, then you can see that the color changes according to the selected color we have. The filling, however, looks a little bit strange in this case. It looks like it is magenta, but it has some greenish shadow on it. We can, however, change this by increasing the threshold here down there. At first it was with 29, but let's say the threshold should be 66.6, yeah. And then we go to the white blob we are having here, or no, the yellow blob here, and then when we click, you can see that the border is much more smaller than the usual, than the first one in our example. Pardon me. We also can do this threshold and increase it to much higher values. Then, however, we should use another color, for instance blue, and then click on our background in our case. And you can see that most of the picture became blue now, and not only the black ones, but also some part of the white ones too. If we even increase the threshold a little bit more, then the color of the picture changes even more to blue. And here, as you can see, the lines here are much more bluish than before. However, if you really want to make amazing effects in your graphics, then you should go again to the bucket fill tool, press the right mouse button, then you will see the tool called gradient. The gradient tool works like this. You have you put a line anywhere you want, and then you can see that these strange waves arrive. We can move these waves around as we want, and then can choose if we like them or not. I don't like them, I press escape. As you can see, there's also the opacity. If it isn't too high, then you also can see color in the background like this. Let's stay with 59.9, and now let's change the gradient to something custom. Here you can see FG to BG. This means foreground to background. This means that the gradient goes from the foreground color, in our case blue for the moment, to the background color, in our case yellow. To show how this works actually, let's use another color again. Let's again use red, yeah. Then we can use the gradient tool to make it like we want. As you can see, the blue things actually changed in a very reddish yellow wave, where it goes from yellow to red with every cut in it. However, we have the possibility to change it into something different. For instance, if we choose bilinear, then you can see that the color actually changed only here. But if we are going, let's say with linear, however, if we are changing the repeat instead of a sawtooth wave to a triangular wave, then you can see this wave effect with yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow, red. By the way, it isn't perfectly yellow and it isn't perfectly red because we have the opacity. If we increase the opacity, you can see it will fully embrace this red and yellowness. However, if we decrease it, then it will be nearly invisible. Let's stay with 60%. Yeah. So the color gradients also have some specific, more amazing modes, like the Caribbean blues or like the full saturation if you want. You can try it yourself if you ever feel like you want to try it. This also concludes my little lesson. I can't wait to see your beautiful pieces of art made in GIMP, and I hope you'll enjoy your day. Your Computerbunsen.